Hey, what is up, guys? Welcome to Minds Behind the Music. I am your host, LA. Today is another episode of Maintaining Your Voice slash Range, but it is to backtrack on a specific topic that I didn't really touch upon, and I really want to touch upon it today. So let's get into it. What I'm going to talk about today are the foods you should stay away from. I didn't really expand on the certain foods that you need to stay away from, and today is specifically towards that because I want to explain why you need to stay away from certain foods, and I will be mentioning foods that I haven't mentioned before that you should probably stay away from, at least when you are performing. Now, as what David Lee, an opera singer from the New York Met, the New York Metropolitan, he put it as this: knowing what to eat before a show actually has a lot more to do with knowing what you shouldn't eat. There are, in fact, very few foods out there that actually help your vocal cords. Most foods either hinder them or simply have little to no effect. Some singers eliminate that stuff entirely from their diet, which it most likely benefits them altogether. But I know a lot of people out there are probably thinking, "Oh, there's so many foods out there that I gotta eliminate. I I don't think I could just do this all together," which is fine. I know a lot of people can't do that. I can't do that either, and it happens. Like, not everyone's gonna be able to commit this much, but at the very least, stay away from these certain foods when you are about to perform. They will be nothing more than hindrance towards your voice. Now let's get started. The first food that you should eliminate from when you're about to perform is dairy of any kind. Any sort of dairy that you have or that you will consume, stay away from it if you're going to perform. At the very least or the very most, have it you can have it after you perform. But here it is. Or I preferably try to stay off of it entirely. I'm not a big cheese eater, so that usually helps, but I know I'm not a lot of I know a lot of other people are not the same. They love cheese, they're big cheese eaters, but it is very difficult for the body to break the cheese down, and sorry to say, it's very bad to have before your show. The reason why I am preaching against dairy is because dairy causes this thing called acid reflux. That is something that creeps up into your esophagus and burns your vocal cords. I've had cases in which the acid reflux has reached up to my throat and hurt my voice. It is very painful. Um, Try to stay away from stuff like that could actually do that, because you do not want to deal with that. It is very painful and is not fun to deal with. Another reason why dairy's bad is because it will cling onto your throat, and it will like thicken the mucus that is already in your throat, which will be very very irritating to deal with, because you're always going to have to clear your throat like all of the time, and you don't want to deal with that. It's very irritating, and it'll also affect your flexibility and range with your singing, because you will have trouble, like, hitting a certain note, because the mucus in the back of your throat will be, kind of holding on to that and kind of like blocking that note from being hit, and you don't want to deal with that. Another type of food or drink that you would want to stay away from is processed sugar. A lot of overly sugary foods are they will not work out in your favor when it comes to singing, and you're better off staying away from them. The sugary foods that I talk about are candy, juice, Nutella, gummy snacks, and just anything overly processed sugar. And dairy is another example of food that is overly processed sugar. They For the similar reason, it hangs onto your throat, and it causes all that phlegm to stay in your throat and build up, and it's just not it's not a fun time. Not a fun time. And a lot of the sugar without fiber or protein will there's more of a chance of that happening if you have sugar without fiber or protein, which of course it'll accelerate or exacerbate that. So you don't want the energy to be zapped out of that beautiful voice of yours. Now, another food that you want to stay away from is caffeine. The reason why, or one of the big reasons why, is because caffeine is diuretic. What I mean by this is that it will cause you to want to urinate more often, and that will dehydrate you. You do not want to have something that will dehydrate you to a great extent. And when you're dehydrated, your vocal cords are dehydrated. It dries out your voice. Your voice needs to stay lubricated in order to work well. Now, another reason is because caffeine messes with your mucus production, and that also dries you out. In addition to that, caffeine constricts your muscles, including the ones in your throat. Now, a lot of people will preach to you and say that a lot of people that have, muscle problems or like moving problems with their bones and their muscles, they say that they prefer to stay away from caffeine. One of the main reasons is because it restricts the muscles and restricts your muscle movement. And the same is said with the muscles in your throat. Caffeine strongly affects that, and you don't want your muscles to be tight in your throat because all that does is put unnecessary damaging stress on your vocal cords. Big no. One way that is, and the number one OG way to stay lubricated is drinking your water. Drink your water. I will never stop saying that. This is the motto of the podcast. Hashtag drink your water. I could even put it up again just for clarification. Here we go. Let me find it. And there we go. Right here. Drink your water. Don't ever forget that. Speaking of which, I'm going to do it right now because my throat's feeling kind of dry. Now, the next food that I'm going to bring up is a triple threat. What I mean by triple threat is it's three of the big problems that I just mentioned before. And that triple threat is chocolate. Why I say it's a triple threat is because it contains caffeine, which will dry your throat out, and it will create tension on your vocal cords or the muscles in your vocal cords. It is an acid reflux trigger because it has dairy in it, and chocolate has a lot of sugar. Definitely keep that in mind. I know it's difficult because a lot of people love chocolate. I love chocolate. I love eating it, but keep away from having it before you go on for a show. Keep away from having it because it will do more harm than good. The next food I will be bringing up is food that a lot of people have for meals. I've had them for meals too, and that's fried foods. Now, the problem with fried foods is because, deep fried and a lot of deep fried foods are prepared in lots of oil that stays on your vocal cords and keeps that it keeps your throat from really being able to move around and it keeps up like the phlegm and the gunk in your throat, so you don't really want to have that before a show. It'll strongly affect it. And another reason is because it triggers heartburn and indigestion, which will strongly affect your breathing, and your breathing is a big part the of your singing, so definitely keep that in mind. You don't want to affect your breathing, which is why I say don't don't smoke either. I would preach you rather not smoke or vape or Juul or any of that stuff because that will affect your throat and that will affect your breathing, and you're just shooting yourself in the foot. Like, I'm keeping it a buck with you guys. You will be shooting yourself in the foot if you affect your breathing in any way, shape, or form. Now, another type of food is butter, because butter is dairy and it has a similar effect to fried foods, and that would be to, restrict your throat and clog up your vocal cords. So it's kind of like a two for one in that issue against your throat, or screwing yourself with your throat. Ice water is surprisingly another one that people should stay away from. I know that a lot of people like to have cold water, especially when their throat is dry. It's very satisfying, very cathartic, but keep away from having water that's like super ice, like specifically with like ice cubes and all that. Another, and never have it too hot either, because it'll have a similar effect on your voice. Why I say not to have overly cold water is because it will constrict the muscles in your throat, again adding to unnecessary stress and loss of flexibility. And again, you don't want that for your throat. It's going to do you more harm than good. Another another drink that will strongly affect your vocal cords in a negative way, which is another 2-for-1 disaster, is soda. Soda is not only full of sugar, but it is also carbonated, meaning, it's fizzy and it has the bubbles and all that other stuff. And a lot of carbonated drinks cause you to burp more, which is a huge distraction to your singing, and you don't want to end up burping while you're singing in the mic, because that's not going to be pleasant to hear, and it's going to be very inopportune for you as a singer. So stay away from that. And the last but certainly not least of all the drinks is alcohol. I know a lot of singers like to, have a drink and rewind and unwind and like calm their nerves down, and to have like a nice and lubricated voice. But what alcohol actually does is the exact opposite of lubricate your voice. It actually dries your voice even more. So definitely do not have alcohol before you go on a show. You do not want a dry throat while you're performing. It is not fun. It's just a big hindrance. So again, drink your water, keep that in mind. Do not have alcohol before a show. If anything, if you still want to have alcohol, and I'm not I'm not trying to suggest alcoholism here at all. I'm not trying to promote that. I never promote that on my show. Save it for after you perform. If you want to have a drink at the bar that you're performing at, if you want to have a drink, uh, just have it after the show. Make sure that you're completely done performing. You don't have anything else left. Just save it for after a show. And that's all. I'm not saying drink your heart out or drink like a fish when you're done, but just if you want to have a beer or something, and there's no harm in any of that. There's no harm in having a beer. I'm not saying if you have to drive, if you have to drive, don't drink at all. But if you don't have to worry about that and you can have a drink, save it for after the show. Save it for after you perform, because that will only cause you more harm than good if you do it before, and you don't want to have a dry throat when you're performing. Now, the last but certainly not least of all the foods that I want to talk about is the spicy foods. Now, you may be used to eating spicy foods in your daily life, which I kind of am too. But do your voice a flavor. That was so bad. And put it aside for, hours before the show. I would say at least 3 or 4 good hours before you have to go and perform. If you're going to have anything spicy, have it like 4 good hours before you go on a show, because if you have spicy foods, that's going to affect your throat and it's going to affect your chest. Like you'll end up with like heartburn or something like that. And you don't want to deal with that like right before a show. So definitely keep that in mind. I'm not saying don't have this at all, but at least save like do it a couple of hours before the show. I would say 4 good hours before the show, so it would give your voice enough time to, digest and kind of like blow over with that type of food so that you'll be ready right before your show. Now, it's the same could be said now with these other foods. Again, I'm not saying don't have them at all. I know it's difficult to take that out of your diet completely, but keep in mind of when you're about to perform. Do not have do not have dairy. I would don't it's never ever have dairy right before the show. That's a big no-no. I am personally trying to have less and less dairy every day. I I'm currently in the process of that. And thanks to my sister as well for getting my mother and I to try and do all these other things or try to get us to consume less dairy. Definitely try to take it like have it less and less in your diet because that will actually help your throat a great deal. And most definitely do not have it before a show because that is the one biggest way to shoot yourself in the foot right before you perform. So do not have dairy. Do not have any of these foods right before you go on a show because again, you're just doing yourself a disservice and again, you're shooting yourself in the foot by doing this. I'm not saying don't ever have these foods at all. I know that a lot of people really enjoy them. I enjoy certain foods right here on this list that is not good for you when you go on a show. So just do not have them before you perform. I'm not, again, that's pretty much all I have to say. Just keep in mind of that. And if you really want to take these off of your diet completely, go on ahead. Go if you have any other alternatives, a lot of people want to go vegan because it'll help them physically and they'll it's better for the environment. That's totally fine. That is your choice and more power to you. But definitely if you enjoy a lot of these foods that I mentioned, just learn to keep them away when you're about to perform and sing and all that other stuff because you'll be doing yourself a great disservice. And as always, drink your water. Never stop drinking your water because water is one of the most essential things that you could have in life or that you could have for your body. You need to be healthy and hydrated, especially when you're performing and especially when you're singing. Drink your water. Guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe if you want to see videos similar to this one. Keep on the lookout for the audio versions of the podcast. I know I haven't been able to work on them and put them out there, but as soon as I get all this other stuff in my life done, you will be seeing audio versions of the podcast. So please keep on the lookout for that. And I appreciate your guys' patience with that. But that's all I have to say, guys. I will see you guys back tomorrow for a live show at 1:30. So definitely be definitely I would definitely love to have you guys for that. So have a good rest of your week. If I don't see you then, have a good rest of your day. And as always, stay tuned.